27 years ago, the orphanage was filled with children who had no one. The walls were old, the rooms were crowded, and the little ones waited every day for someone to walk through the doors and choose them. Some were lucky, adopted quickly because they were babies or because they looked perfect in the eyes of families. But in one corner sat a little girl who was often overlooked. She was quiet, shy, and had eyes that carried sadness much deeper than her years. People came and went, glancing at her, but moving on to others. Some families wanted children with bright smiles or cheerful personalities. She, however, sat silently, clutching a small cloth doll that was her only comfort. Day after day, she wondered if she would ever be chosen, or if she would spend her whole childhood waiting. One afternoon, a woman walked in. She wasn't rich, nor was she dressed in fancy clothes, but her eyes were gentle and her heart was kind. She had always dreamed of being a mother, but life had not given her children of her own. When she entered the orphanage, she wasn't looking for the perfect child. She was looking for someone to love. Her eyes fell on the quiet girl in the corner. The child didn't run up to her or try to impress her like some of the other children did. Instead, she simply looked up, her eyes filled with loneliness and hope at the same time. That one look pierced the woman's heart. She walked over, knelt down, and gently asked, "What's your name, dear?" The girl whispered her name softly, afraid that if she spoke too loudly, the moment would vanish. The woman smiled and touched her hand. It was a small gesture, but for the little girl, it was the first warmth she had felt in a long time. When the woman told the orphanage staff that she wanted to adopt the girl, they were surprised. Many other children were easier to place. They warned her about the challenges, raising a child alone, the financial struggles, the emotional responsibility. But she didn't hesitate. "She needs a mother," she said firmly. "And I need a daughter." The adoption process took weeks, filled with papers and approvals. The girl watched carefully, half expecting the woman to change her mind like so many others had before. But every time she visited, the woman carried the same warm smile and brought small gifts: a ribbon for her hair, a book with colorful pictures, or a packet of biscuits. Slowly, the girl began to trust that maybe this time someone really wanted her. Finally, the day arrived. The staff told her she was leaving with her new mother. She couldn't believe it. She clutched her little doll tightly as the woman held out her hand. For the first time, she had a hand to hold. For the first time, she wasn't walking out of the orphanage as just another forgotten child. She was walking out as a daughter. The journey to her new home was filled with silence at first. The girl was shy, unsure of what to say, but the woman spoke gently, pointing out the trees, the shops, the sky, trying to make her smile. And slowly, the corners of the girl's lips lifted. It was small, but it was real. When they reached the house, the girl's eyes widened. It wasn't a mansion or a palace, but to her it felt magical. There was a small bed with fresh sheets waiting for her, a table where she could eat, and a shelf where she could keep her doll. Everything smelled new and safe. She had never had a place that truly belonged to her, but now she did. That night, when the woman tucked her into bed, the girl whispered softly, "Will you leave me too?" The question broke the woman's heart. She hugged her tightly and said, "No, my child. I am your mother now. I will never leave you." The little girl closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, those tears were not from sadness, but from relief. She finally had someone who chose her, someone who saw her when no one else did. That night marked the beginning of a bond that would last for decades. The woman was no longer just a kind stranger. She was her mother. And the girl was no longer just another orphan. She was a daughter with a future. What neither of them knew at that moment was how far this decision would go. They couldn't see the struggles ahead, or the sacrifices that would be made. They couldn't imagine how life would test them, or how strong their love would have to be. But they both knew one thing. From that day forward, they would walk together, no matter what. And as the girl drifted into sleep that first night in her new home, she held her doll in one arm and her mother's promise in her heart. After years of being invisible, she finally belonged. Life after adoption was not a fairy tale. The little girl was happy to finally have a mother, but the journey was filled with struggles that tested both of them. The woman who had adopted her was not rich. She lived a simple life, working long hours to provide food, clothes, and shelter. Every coin mattered. Every small bill had to be carefully counted, and sometimes sacrifices had to be made. But she never once complained. For her, raising this child was not a burden, it was a blessing. The girl, however, carried scars that no one could see. Being abandoned at a young age had left her insecure. At school, when other children teased her for being adopted, she would return home in tears. "Why don't I look like you?" she asked her mother one night. The woman hugged her tightly and said, "Because you were chosen. Some children come to their parents by birth. You came to me by choice. That makes you even more special." But the outside world was not always kind. Relatives sometimes whispered, "Why did she adopt? Wouldn't it have been easier to live alone?" Neighbors doubted her decision, saying the girl might not respect her when she grew older. Every word stung, but the woman stayed strong. She answered them with actions, working harder, loving deeper, and standing firmly by her daughter. As the years passed, the girl grew, and so did their bond. The mother taught her to cook, to read, and to dream. Even when money was tight, she made sure her daughter went to school. Many nights she went hungry so her child could eat, but she never let her know. She wanted her daughter to focus on studies, not worries. The girl struggled too. She often felt different, carrying the label adopted like a shadow. But her mother's constant love became her shield. She began to study harder, determined not to let the sacrifices go to waste. She promised herself that she would one day make her mother proud. There were days when things seemed impossible. Illnesses, unpaid bills, broken shoes, and empty cupboards. Life tested them again and again. But each time they held on to each other. When the mother was tired, the daughter massaged her hands. When the daughter was discouraged, the mother reminded her, "Storms don't last forever." Slowly, the little girl became a young woman. She learned discipline from hardship and strength from love. She began to excel in school, surprising her teachers. Her mother's faith in her gave her courage to try new things. Every small victory felt like a shared triumph between them. Though life was never easy, their bond grew unshakable. The mother never let go of her promise, "I will never leave you." And the daughter never forgot the warmth of the hand that lifted her from an orphanage into a home. What no one else could see was how these struggles were shaping the girl's future. Every sacrifice her mother made became a lesson in resilience. Every cruel comment from the world became fuel to prove them wrong. She was not just growing, she was preparing for something bigger. And deep inside, the daughter carried a secret dream, that one day she would give back everything her mother had given her. She did not know how yet, but she knew that when the time came, her gratitude would shine brighter than all the pain they had endured. Years passed, and the little girl who once clung to a cloth doll grew into a determined young woman. Her journey had been hard, but every struggle had prepared her for the future. She remembered the nights when her mother stayed awake sewing clothes just to earn extra money. She remembered how her mother gave her the last piece of bread while pretending she wasn't hungry. These memories lived in her heart, and they became her motivation to succeed. At school, she worked harder than anyone else. She knew education was her only weapon to fight poverty and silence the cruel voices that had once mocked her adoption. While other children played, she stayed late in the library, reading, practicing, and pushing herself. Her teachers noticed her dedication. They often said, "She has something different in her eyes, a hunger to rise." Her mother never stopped encouraging her. Every exam result, every certificate, every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated. Sometimes the celebration was just a shared smile or a simple meal of rice and curry, but for them it felt like a festival. Slowly, the girl began to believe in herself. When she grew older, she earned a scholarship to study further. It was a dream come true. She cried when she received the letter, hugging her mother tightly. "This is because of you," she whispered. "You gave me everything. Now it's my turn." Her mother only smiled, wiping away her tears, proud beyond words. University life opened new doors. She studied with passion, made friends who respected her, and discovered her talents. She was no longer the quiet, insecure girl of the past. She was confident, graceful, and determined. Each time she faced a challenge, she thought of her mother's tired hands and strong spirit, and it gave her courage to push forward. After years of hard work, she graduated with honors. The day of her graduation, she walked onto the stage in her cap and gown, searching the crowd until she saw her mother sitting in the audience. The old woman clapped with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. For her, that moment was worth every sleepless night, every empty stomach, every sacrifice. She whispered to herself, "I was right to choose her. She was worth everything." But the story didn't end there. With her education, the young woman found a good job. She worked tirelessly, climbing higher each year. She saved money, not for luxury, but for a promise she had made long ago, to reward the mother who had given her a life when no one else would. Her colleagues admired her, calling her strong, disciplined, and kind. But what they didn't know was that her real strength came from home. Every decision she made was guided by the thought of her mother. She wanted to repay the love that had raised her, and she was determined to do it in a way no one would forget. And so, as her success grew, so did her plans. Quietly, she began preparing something extraordinary for the woman who had once walked into an orphanage and chosen a lonely little girl. Something that would show the world that gratitude lasts forever, and that love given selflessly always comes back, sometimes years later, in the most beautiful way. Time has a way of moving silently. 27 years passed, and the little girl who once lived in an orphanage was now a successful woman. She had built a career, earned respect, and stood tall in the world. But no matter how far she went, she never forgot where her journey began. At the moment, a kind woman held out her hand and chose her when no one else did. Her mother had grown older now. Her hair was silver, her steps slower, but her eyes still carried the same warmth they did on the day she adopted her daughter. She still lived in the same modest house with walls that had grown worn and cracked over the years. She was content, never asking for more. But her daughter had been planning something for a long time, a way to show her gratitude, a way to reward the woman who had given her everything. One morning, she asked her mother to come with her. The old woman was puzzled. "Where are we going?" she asked, smiling. The daughter only replied, "You'll see." They drove through the city, past tall buildings and wide streets until they stopped in front of a beautiful new home. The house was large, bright, and filled with sunlight. The garden bloomed with flowers, and the sound of birds filled the air. The mother looked around in wonder. "Whose house is this?" she asked softly. The daughter took her hand and said with tears in her eyes, "It's yours, Mama. This is my gift to you, my reward for everything you gave me." For a moment, the old woman was speechless. She looked at her daughter, then at the house, and tears rolled down her cheeks. She shook her head, whispering, "I don't need this. You were always enough. You were always my gift." But the daughter held her tightly and said, "I know. But you gave me a life, a future, and love when no one else would. You sacrificed everything for me. Now it's my turn to give you the comfort and happiness you deserve." The neighbors, friends, and relatives who once doubted the woman's decision to adopt now stood in silence. They remembered the days when they had questioned her choice, when they whispered that raising an adopted child would bring nothing but trouble. And now they saw the truth with their own eyes. The child she had chosen had grown into a woman who carried her gratitude like a crown. Inside the house, the mother walked slowly through the rooms. Everything was ready for her. A cozy bed, a kitchen filled with food, books on the shelves, and a chair near the window where she could sit and watch the world. Each detail was carefully planned by her daughter. It wasn't just a house. It was a dream, built out of love and gratitude. As they stood together in the living room, the daughter turned to her mother and said, "You once promised me you would never leave me. And you never did. Now I promise you this, you will never have to worry again. This is your home, your peace, your reward." The old woman hugged her daughter tightly, her tears soaking her shoulder. In that embrace, 27 years of sacrifice, love, struggle, and hope came full circle. Those who witnessed the story could only feel regret in their hearts. They regretted ever doubting the power of adoption, ever questioning the worth of a child who wasn't born by blood. They realized that love doesn't need to be written in DNA. It needs to be written in the heart. The daughter's success was not just her own. It was her mother's too. And the beautiful home was not just a reward. It was proof that love given selflessly always returns, stronger than ever. From that day on, the mother lived her remaining years in comfort and joy, surrounded not by luxury but by love. And the daughter, now grown, never stopped reminding her, "You gave me everything. Now it's my turn to give it back." And so their story became more than just a personal journey. It became an example for the world, that kindness lasts forever, that sacrifice is never wasted, and that sometimes the greatest rewards take years to return. But when they do, They are more powerful than anyone could ever imagine.